Okay, and we're on. Hey, David Boyle.
Hello, Roy. How are you?
Very good. I'm so happy to have you here. We've been having a few chats recently and really glad we're able to do another episode of In the Spotlight with you. And maybe just for the audience, a little bit background about you. You're the co-founder of RevCentric Partners. You'll talk about that in a second because I think it's a very unique point of view that you bring to the market. You spend some time with the biggest logos in go to market, BMC, which is sort of the mecca and the school that a lot of big ones came out of. Sumo Logic, where you were a vice president, Zscaler, and others. You were two-time CRO at Overops and Stride Software, and you're helping in revenue strategy
Mhm.
and other type of revenue activities as an advisor as well. Amazing to have you, David. Thanks for taking the time.
Real pleasure. Real pleasure. I love this type of stuff. I get geeky about it. If this can help out in any way, I'm game.
All right, let's get to it. First, maybe as a background, we know of each other for a long time. We met in a conference a few months ago, and then started chatting since then. And I think what really makes this interesting is we share a lot of points of views on go to market, on teams, right? And so that's from my perspective, that's what led me to really want to spend more time. And I'd love to start with maybe just as a background, what does RevCentric do, and what do you do?
Wonderful. You know what we do? We're a consultancy. We teach leaders and sellers what the legends taught us. We are fundamentally we're all about the playbook. And there's a number of things that a seller or a leader should be good at when it comes to enterprise selling. And we teach what has been proven to work from our experience working at PTC, where we were the pioneers of Medic, the group that literally rolled it out, to our experience at companies like BMC or Splunk or Databricks or App Dynamics or Zscaler. We teach the playbook to companies and just having a great time doing it.
Amazing. And we know a lot of joint people in those
Yeah.
companies. When you get out of those companies with so much know-how, and you get into companies that want to stride to get to that kind of a know-how and level. If you talk to a CRO right now that's looking at 2026 and they're trying to evaluate themselves, how should they self-evaluate themselves before they speak to somebody like you? What should they ask themselves looking at their organization in terms of understanding where their bottlenecks, what's the number one thing they need to focus on?
Yeah, that's a great question. Listen, anything I say is going to come from my personal experiences, like reporting to Brian Halligan, who founded HubSpot, or Carlos Delatorre, who eventually was the CRO at Mongo, took them public, or Dan Fougere, who I reported to, eventually took Datadog public, or my experience working in a John McMahon organization on 3 different times. I think this is time tested, basic stuff that we love to focus on. But I think you can't go anywhere without being honest with yourself when it comes to hiring. Hiring is everything. It's 80% of the task. Now, if you remove hiring, though, I think one needs to look carefully at how good is the organization at creating qualified sales opportunities. And that's a combination of both prospecting and doing a good job on your initial sales calls. I think if people are honest with themselves, I think they're going to see that they're probably going to need to have some improvement on hiring and some improvement on how the organization creates qualified opportunities that they can try to close at some point. There's other
Interesting.
things, but those are the two main things I think I was taught by these legends that should be the key focus over and over again.
All right, so let's talk about the second thing actually. So what do teams do wrong there?
Boy, so fundamentally, if you look at whether or not somebody is good at creating qualified sales opportunities, so these are top 1/3 of the funnel, they tend to fall down with poor messaging. Their messaging is off. The sellers don't have a certain command or control or confidence in effective messaging. And then the second thing they struggle with is the level of effort and strategy when it comes to prospecting. And then the third thing that they fall down on is, what do you do with this messaging on a sales call? How do I run my first or second meeting in such a way, apply certain skills and the messaging to turn this nothing of an opportunity into a real opportunity? It's a breakdown probably into three buckets.
So let's talk about what the great ones do well in those first
Yeah.
meeting, second meeting, and how do you divide? Because we've all been in those meetings, and you could
Mm.
see when a meeting goes well is when you actually created a great alignment between finding the pain and a differentiator that you know how to talk about really well.
Totally.
And so, but when the skills from soft skills and sort of just activities that you need to go do, how do you look at those magic points?
So, again, these the great sales organizations focus on this, and it's interesting. So, a lot of the success of that sales call happens well before the sales call. So, who are you calling on? Is it the ICP? And are you high in the organization? Are you calling on an influential person, maybe even the economic buyer to start with? There's nothing wrong with calling the economic buyer at the get-go. Right. There's direct correlation between the level of person you're talking to and whether or not this thing closes. Well, on average, 10% of a first calls eventually can close. You get up to the C level, that's about 33%. It's literally like having three times more activity because the percentage that close. So who you call on is critical. And then you just need to be prepared with effective messaging. We argue and promote that what others taught us, what we did as proven sellers in our organization, we're all proven sellers, that you should come into that meeting with an hypothesis. You should have a fully formed idea of their pain, and you're going to talk to them about what you think their pain is. And you're going to talk to them about what you think the negative consequences are. You're not going to go there with like a pen and paper saying, hey, what's going on? What's the problem? I mean, you called for the meeting. I mean, you're bugging them. They're like, why are you bothering me? Well, I'm going there because I have an opinion. Even though we've never spoken, I think this is your problem because I work with all these other people. And these are the negative consequences. Am I crazy? Can you elaborate? Is this true? That's just fundamentally different than how a lot of people sell, who maybe they're dealing with inbound and they're literally like, why are you reaching out? What's your
Right.
problem? Or they're outbound, but they're sloppy at outbound. Don't show up with an hypothesis or any preparation. So we would promote the idea, and we teach this about having effective persona-based or use case messaging for that person with an hypothesis of their pain and the negative outcomes. And then the seller needs to really dig in there. And then they pivot and they talk about a future state that other people are enjoying and whether or not this person would enjoy that future state. Would they like these outcomes? This is you're selling outcomes. How you get there, that's important. But first, do you even want to go where we can take you? And if you can set the hook that, yeah, I do actually want to go there, then it's secondary on what makes you unique or what are your core differentiators or what are your required capabilities. The great sellers come in with that strong hypothesis on current and future state.
Amazing. I love it. And I think one of the things that the great ones do really well is they can balance that that opinion that they come in with, the hypothesis they come in with still the ability to stay flexible and listen. So
Yeah.
they come with a hypothesis, but the objective is to listen,
Yes,
right?
absolutely. It is absolutely about listening. One of these things we talk about hiring, one of the hiring traits that we promote and we talk to people about hiring is curiosity.
Right.
They have to be authentically curious about whether or not this hypothesis is even correct and totally willing to trash it. But they have to it's really interesting. If you think about it, if you step back and say at some point I'm going to have to deliver a business justification, whether it's the 3 whys, right? Whether it's something, some representation, I'm going to have to present something. It's going to be documented. Then we would contend, based on our mentors, that maybe you should start early. Why not come up with a hypothesis? You will change it, but start there and maybe work off of that hypothesis and eventually creating something that captures or memorializes the relationship between vendor and customer. The memorialization is documented. This is what we're solving for.
Amazing. And I think it's right to give a shout out, not that he probably needs it, but to John McMahon with the Qualified Sales Leader book, where I think one of the first things he talks on is exactly the curiosity, that he looks for in people. So this is
Good.
exactly what you're talking about. Find that this is, we can tell people what they need to do, but how they do it is really their DNA. It could be taught, but there's a lot of DNA here, and this is part of the hiring that you're talking about.
Yes, someone who's curious, someone who's coachable, and someone that is, I'll I'll say, pathologically driven. It's literally on a pathological level. This maybe today people call it grit, whatever. It's perseverance. They're going to push through the downtime, the bad days. But yeah, it starts with curiosity. Curiosity is the cornerstone of it all.
Amazing. When you look at, so let's take a look at the changes that are happening right now, some disruptions in both technologically, but those that actually impact the go to market. So I'll give an example. We're talking to RevOps and CROs and AI VP of AI strategy. The amount of messaging that hits them with AI is just bombarding. It's like I got people that actually told me at the beginning of a meeting. They said, "Look, we want to talk to you guys, but just to let you know, we are not going to believe anything that's not proven because of all the things that we've been told up until now." So they come in with lack of trust because of the over messaging that they're bombarded in. And so I do think this needs to change and impact how we sell and how we message, where proof points come in and how we do this. But I'm interested in when you look at this from this angle, at 2026, 2027, what are teams going to need to do different within that point of view than they did before?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So we use AI and particularly in our messaging and our prospecting modules. They're one of 10 modules we provide. And we have a specific offering like AI for sales. It's very helpful. But yeah, there's a lot of noise. There's a lot of noise. And you could be like two guys in a trick duck in your AI solution trying to sell it and no one really believes it. I think there needs to be command and confidence in how you're going to use AI. There are certain use cases that it's good for. But we believe, we contend here, based on our own personal experience of being world number one sellers and CROs and working for the greats, that you're sadly mistaken if you think fundamentals have somehow left the building with Elvis. It is fundamentals. The great sales organizations, and I have some friends in some great companies, they are all day long and 7 times again on Sunday working on fundamentals. And here's a litmus test. Anyone who's listening to this that might be a leader, if you doubt me, go have a one-on-one call with every one of your reports. Spend 5 minutes and ask them to give you the elevator. Don't do it as a group. Just listen to them. You look yourself in the mirror and you ask yourself, how strong is my team on fundamentals? And you're going to find they're not as strong as you thought they were. We fall back to the level of our training. They commonly talk about that in the military, but that was all McMahon, right? The accountability at PDC, you fall back. And when you're on that phone call trying to book a meeting or you're trying to develop a champion or you're in a presentation, you're going to fall back on your fundamentals. Do you have proof points? Do you know how to handle an objection? What's your value proposition? Do you know what metrics to go after? This is all fundamental. I'm from Boston. Don't tell me that Larry Bird was weak at fundamentals. Don't tell me that Tom Brady's weak at fundamentals or this young man, Drake May is weak on fundamentals. They're fundamentally strong and that's why they're good.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I agree. I think the not losing sight of that is completely key. And I think some of these fundamentals might actually become stronger than they were.
Oh, totally.
Right, right, right. So, for example, tailoring the proof points
Yes.
to the use case and to the workflow that we're trying to solve for, like that becomes extremely important because of all the promises that are thrown out there.
Yes.
And so the more specific we get, the more they can
Yeah.
see themselves in those proof points. That becomes much more critical, maybe than 5, 7 years ago, where yeah, they got the value, we believe it, right? And now it's they really need to understand how the dots are connected from the value through the proof points to their pain and workflow.
That's right. I learned once from Carlos Torre, who's a dear friend, has been a great leader to me 3 times. That it's maybe a silly slogan, but it stuck with me. The further we pull back the slingshot, the farther the rock goes. And that's true with, let's say, messaging. So is it use case based? Is it persona based? How crystal clear are we? How impactful are we? If you start measuring things, forget about revenue. If you just start measuring like other indicators, like the percentage of phone calls that agree to meet with you, or the percentage of first meetings that convert to a qualified sales opportunity. You really start trying to move those needles, these precursors, these KPIs, you better darn well better be specific and impactful. That's the difference between someone agreeing to do something they otherwise would not have done because you really got them. And I think what happens is a lot of people kind of just they're close. They're 75% way there, but they're not as specific and as impactful as they could be. And as a result, those KPIs begin to drop and it does have a ripple effect downstream on revenue.
Right. Right. Amazing. So now let's get away from theory. Let's get down to the ground.
Yeah,
And I'd love to hear about specific deal that you ran and a deal that blindsided you
sure,
that you today you can bring it back to
sure,
what you're talking about.
sure.
And either won or lost, doesn't matter. But
Oh,
where was the blindsiding that if you look at
yeah,
it in hindsight today, you can say, hey,
that's
of
great.
course.
That's a great one. And this goes back. This is why we enjoy what we do so much here. Me and my 6 partners, we're all proven sellers. We all fall back on our own experience. So one of it was New York Times. I was at Zscaler. I thought I was pretty good. I was PTC and I got promoted a bunch of times to second line. I thought, had to be pretty good. But I tell you, I was in my mid 30s at BMC and I was still learning. And I had a sales cycle at New York Times and I thought we were going to do a good job. And Carlos wanted to meet them and have a go, no go meeting with them. And I was able to force it with my champion. Let's talk to the economic buyer and qualify this thing before we do a POV. This is a pretty standard motion. Go, no go. You know it from your own experience. And we went there and we weren't ready. Customer wasn't ready. And Carlos, being Carlos, curious as ever, was like, "Can you tell me why you like Blade Logic? What are the key capabilities that interest you? And what are the anticipated outcomes?" And the answers, while good, weren't great. And candidly, I just hadn't done enough work on the specificity that you talk about. And Carlos, to his credit, was like, let's just slow down. I was going to qualify this thing and make sure it's real. How about we just spend some time on required capabilities necessary to deliver the future state and the particular outcomes we think, based on our own past experience, customer story, customer story, customer story, that you should have. And I just watched this master class in going slow and educating the person and then asking them to repeat back what he heard. Like, I can't even believe he's asking this economic buyer to repeat back. But I tell you, we walked out of there with stronger champions who agreed, yeah, let's get together next week to talk about the POV. And they were thanking Carlos for slowing down. Um, I thought Carlos was going to, rip me a new one and in the parking lot there, where we're on 41st and 8th Avenue. And he's like, that's when he gave me the whole story about pulling the slingshot back. He was kind to me. He said, listen, you're just moving a little fast, which is natural for sellers. You think it's some race, and the quicker I finish the race, the quicker I get the deal. It's like, no, 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 no. At certain times, you need to really slow down and get on this fundamental selling level. And what happened was we did get the deal and it did grow. We actually grew the size of the deal because we had established clear differentiation. So I would say that is actually a story that, was I wouldn't say it's a glamorous story. I was screwing up and I learned from that. Never again.
This
That's
is
one
where
of the
glamorous stories come from, man, because you can't have glamorous stories if you don't go through these things.
yeah,
And I think it's the most human thing for a seller to go and want to win, because
yeah.
what's driving you is just the will to win. And
Yeah, that's where the pathological drive maybe overrides the wisdom to slow down in order to speed up and to develop champions. But I took that throughout my career, and very recently, before I started RevCentric with my partners in the summer of 2024, I mean, I was selling and leading like. So I remember distinctly being a seller 2021 at Zscaler, covering JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, and Goldman Sachs as a strategic rep. Just an incredible opportunity to have massive impact. And I did, with the help of 17 people from my side, a land deal that Goldman, it was outbound to the head of network. prospecting. And 11 months later, almost 200 meetings later, 48 people from their side, 17 people from our side. We did a $2.7 million ARR deal for 3 years against competing against Palo and Netscope. And all of those lessons that I've learned over the years I was using later stage in my career about building champions, going slow, documenting pain, creating a business case and confirming they believe the business case and taking it slowly with the blessing of my champions up to the economic buyer, with them playing a full role in the economic buyer presentation, almost like we were on the same team and I was just kind of coordinating it and getting real small while my champions moved up. This is all the stuff we learned over the years. And I guess it's the personification of Medic
Right.
and tied it together with a great deal. Zscaler now enjoys an annual run rate with Goldman of almost $7 million. So it's been a great deployment there.
Amazing. Amazing story. Thank you for that. All right. Last thing is AI is going to change how an enterprise seller develops their career,
Totally.
how a first line manager executes their inspections and what they do,
Yes.
how a CRO views risks in their pipeline, how RevOps is running the KPIs they need to run. So Medpic is all about surfacing those gaps and guiding to make sure we cover all these things. But the rep has more and more of these activities that are getting done for them,
Hmm.
while they still need to stay in control, orchestrate, build trust, build
Yes.
navigate the organization. So how is the rep that is going to sell in 2026, 7, 8 going to be different than the rep that sold 10 years ago in that motion, in that value sales
Yeah,
motion?
yeah. Well, clearly the reps today are good at AI. So we weren't using AI. And you would be behind the eight ball if you're a rep and you don't know how to use AI. And there should be, I think, in your company, and we promote this, we advocate this, at least 5 up to 10 solid use cases that AI can play a role, right?
Right.
And the training and the enablement and the skill set should be around AI relative to your tools, relative to the use case, right? It shouldn't just be some random use. Your company, your leadership should be just like with like how to handle an objection or how to there should be clear alignment on the expectations that AI is going to be used for this use case and we're going to learn it together and focus on being fundamentally sound on these use cases. We've identified 5 main use cases. There was actually maybe up to 10, and you have to be good at it. And it should be sanctioned and supported by the company. Totally. AI is great at saving time. AI is really a productivity saver. The one challenge with AI that we have to be looking out for is that it somehow reduces our opportunity for critical thinking. We have to use our critical thinking to supplement and complement the automation that AI comes. What am I seeing? What am I perceiving? What am I learning? How do I perceive this?
Right.
How am I learning?
So I have an example to that point. We just released what we call the research agent, and the research agent is supposed to do exactly touch on the activity you started with, which is how do we help reps research to come up with a hypothesis before they come into the meeting. And that's huge because the amount of time they spend on collecting all this information, synthesizing it, creating a point of view out of it is huge. And so it's a huge helper. However, if I want to take the other side of the coin, right, we need to make sure reps don't offload their responsibility to own the point of view. The fact that the agent went and got you the information doesn't mean you don't own that research and point of view anymore. And maybe you need to, in some cases, you got 90% what you need. Maybe in some cases, you got 60% what you need. And you need to go do the work that needs to get done. And so I 100% agree with that. And the way I describe it to sales leaders is reps will need to turn from 100% executors to orchestrators. They have to orchestrate AI, their own work, their customer, the internal resources of the company. They have to become much more sophisticated orchestrators than they were, because if they just execute, then they don't leverage everything that's coming their way.
Agreed. They need to internalize the output. Do they own it? Do they agree with it? And then their curiosity kicks in and they have to
Right.
own it. You got to dig in. Is this really it? because those great sellers do internalize it and they're solving problems for their customers. What we're seeing is occasionally, if you're not careful as a leader, the reps literally just might just print it out and say, "This is what I think," and they literally aren't paying attention, and there's no ownership, and that's not good. It's like they're trying to cut corners, and it's really unnecessary because you get so much productivity gains with AI. Like, you get a lot of time, so like spend that time. And when we spent 3 hours back in the old days doing a value pyramid, we internalized it. Like, we
Word.
understood it, and when we met with folks, they knew we understood it. And you just got to be careful that you're not internalizing it anymore, because that does not help sales.
Exactly, exactly. I think it's an exciting future. There's great power that comes to the rep. They need to keep the great responsibility with them, and it's gonna be an exciting 2026, 2027 to see what's happening. We're gonna do some good things together, RevCentric and Spotlight.
Oh, yeah.
So I look forward to that as well. David, it's been great talking to you. Thanks so much for the time today.
It's a real pleasure. We love helping people out. If we can be of service to teach others what the legends taught us, we're happy to. And I look forward to working with you in the future.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.